First Peter chapter 2, verses 13 through 14, and I do not think this is going to be a big shocker to you, but you're supposed to follow the rules. You're supposed to obey the rules that are set around you. And and Peter will address, that does include rules that you don't like, and perhaps even rules that might not be the best. Yeah, there should be better rules, better guidance. But Peter actually encourages us, and I would say the Lord commands us to be obedient to all of those in our lives that gives us rules. The only exception to that is going to be if those rules contradict God's rules. If it contradicts the Ten Commandments, if it contradicts and tells you that you should worship another God, if it tells you that you should hate your neighbor, yes, those rules should be disobeyed. And as Peter will explain later on, you should also be willing to suffer the consequences of it. A very interesting take that Peter gives us. Definitely, I think, as you examine the Sermon on the Mount from Jesus himself, really expounding and explaining what it means to take up your cross, or what it means to when a Roman governor asks you to carry his burden, and rather than carrying it one, you go ahead and carry it that extra mile. Jesus is telling us how to submit to our governing authorities, and he begins by saying that you need to follow the rules. So let's look at these two simple verses. Be subject, command for us from Peter's mouth, ultimately from the Lord's mouth, as we hold these words to be from God himself, that as Peter writes them, he was carried away by the Spirit, and the words that he ended up putting to pen on paper or quill, whatever he might have been writing with, whatever the instrument was, that these are indeed from the Lord himself. The church acknowledged that, and we do as today. So he's telling us, be subject for the Lord's sake. That should be an attitude to follow, not an example to follow, but an attitude to change, that we need to be subject to every human institution. We need to obey the rules. The only exception, of course, is if it's telling you to disobey a clear command of the Lord. So Peter says, well, who? Whether it be to the emperor as supreme, and it won't be any shocker to you that the Romans were not giving really a good godly rules when it comes to worship. The emperor even thought he was king, or was the Lord, was a God, or at least a son of God. So whether it be to the emperor as supreme, or to these under lower magistrates and governors, or to governors as sent by him to punish those who do evil and to praise those who do good. So Peter is acknowledging a good government should be punishing those that do wrong, and should be praising those who do good. But we know for sure Rome wasn't always about that business. And yet Peter tells us, the Lord tells us, that we should be subject to every human institution. Why? For the Lord's sake. We are God's representatives, and as we show a humble, obedient heart, indeed, the Lord will use us to be a light to those around us. We do not want to be labeled rebels for no good reason. And even if we are rebellious, we are only rebellious in the sense that we refuse to do something that the Lord commands us not to do, or we refuse to stop doing those things that God has commanded us to do. In those ways, we can be rebellious, but it's a quiet rebellion. If you think about Daniel had the practice of praying 3 times a day, in the morning, in the middle of the day, and in the evening. And he would always open the window and he would pray toward Jerusalem. But the king made a command that should not happen. You should only pray to the king. You should not pray to God. You shouldn't pray to anybody else except him. But what did Daniel continue to do? He continued his practice. He was rebellious, but he didn't get on his social media feed and do some things. He didn't go out and make a big proclamation that he was praying or doing this or that. He just kept doing what he normally did because that's what he was commanded to do. That should be the flavor of our rebellion if we find ourselves ever in a spot where we should rebel. We need to obey and do what the Lord has clearly told us to do and refrain from doing those things that He has clearly told us not to do. And in all of that, we need to realize that we're being subject to the Lord and that everything else, we need to follow the rules that the authorities give us. That's hard to swallow because sometimes the rules don't make sense. Sometimes they seem silly. They even seem unfair at times. But unless they overtly tell us to do something against what the Lord has commanded us, we should be subject to every human institution. I pray that has been a blessing to you. Tomorrow we'll see why we need to do that. And I will see you all in the next video.